I would like to call to order the December 16th regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Phelps-Clifton Springs School District. Pam, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District Board of Education meets to publicly conduct its business in accordance with the law. The public is invited to observe these proceedings but is not entitled to respond or disrupt them, especially when such disturbances run counter to the district's code of conduct and the welcoming spirit of our district. The public is reminded of the context of board meetings. Board members are volunteers, audience members are visitors to school grounds, and student and staff well-being is at the heart of board operations. Visitors are reminded of the courage it takes to speak up as members of our community and the importance of encouraging civic and civil engagement. The board strives to hear all community voices during its public meetings in a safe, respectful, and orderly manner. The behavior that we expect of all students in our classrooms is also expected from visitors at board meetings. In an effort to ensure that community members' concerns are heard, the board reminds speakers to address the board in a civil manner, refrain from discussing specific personnel or students, limit outbursts, and limit unnecessary noise. The board encourages an atmosphere of respect and tolerance and strict adherence to its code of conduct. Roll call.
Lynn Liebrecht, board member.
Lindsay Marino, board member.
Mike Dorr, board member.
Heather Rockefeller, board member.
Deb Gallagher, board member.
Matt Goodman, board member.
Carl Dubash, business administrator. Nick Ganster, superintendent.
Tracy Altman, board member.
Pamela Mann, district clerk.
Okay, I'm wondering if I can get a motion to amend the agenda to add an adjournment to executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, so on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the amended agenda, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of entering into, or to discuss matters pertaining to the employment of a particular person?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. We will be right back. I would like to call the meeting back to order. We are, gotta get to the right spot here. Consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And on to presentations. So the fall athletic recognition, Mr. Lombardi?
Are we good? Is it on? Okay. All right. Good evening. Thank you for having us here tonight to recognize some of our fall athletes. I want to thank the Board of Education and Superintendent Ganster for supporting all of our 24 fall modified JV and varsity sports this year. In the fall, we had 352 student athletes participating in grades 7 through 12 in our athletic activities. Out of those 352, just over 125 of them competed at the varsity level. We had 35 athletes receive all league recognition. Additionally, our very own Aiden Bryant earned first team All-Greater Rochester All-Star honors this year. We also had 62 individual scholar athletes and 7 scholar athlete teams. The teams were boys volleyball, girls volleyball, game day cheer, girls soccer, girls tennis, girls swimming, girls cross country, and girls swimming and diving. We're incredibly proud of all who participated in athletics and represented our community so well. I did have a slideshow, but if not, that's okay. Okay, no worries, not a big deal. I just wanted to make sure, but that's fine. First up, we also have some of our individual award winners and some special honors that we'd like to honor tonight. First up, we would like to recognize Caden DeMarco. Caden, come on up so everybody can see you. Caden was named Finger Lakes Golfer of the Year for the Finger Lakes. He was just one stroke away from winning a league title. He's already qualified for sectionals this coming spring. Caden's been a leader on the team, and he's a steady player on the course, and we're excited to see what he can achieve moving forward.
Yeah, Hayden.
Next, we would like to recognize our 2024 Class B sectional champions, coached by Kyle Salisbury and Josh Delgado. The players that were on varsity this season were Declan Reed. If you're here, at least stand up so you can be seen, or even come on up. Braxton Wilkes, Liam Killian, Jake Decker, Jesse Bennett, Aiden Bryant, Teddy Altman, Joa Bennett, and Torrin Lane. Coach Salzi, can you help me hand these certificates out? Okay, thank you. This year's team finished the season with a 14-10 record, playing a challenging schedule. They capped off this year's season with a win over the School of Arts in the Class B2 sectional championship. Braxton Wilkes and Jake Deckert were named to the all-tournament team, and Aiden Bryan earned tournament MVP honors. This team made many of the victories look effortlessly. I swear sometimes I thought they were cheating out there because of how crazy it was out there and how quick they took advantage of their opponents. But we couldn't be more proud of their accomplishments, so congratulations. Yep. The old switcheroo. I know who knows things anyway. Yep. Thank you. Now we would like to honor Thea Lewis. Thea, come on up. This year, she received the Roger Medway Award from the Finger Lakes Coaches Association. This prestigious award is awarded to a student athlete who shows leadership and sportsmanship and stands out to coaches across the league. Thea was first Mid-Lakes tennis player to ever receive this award and this recognition. As a senior leader, Thea played both singles and doubles to help her team find success this season. And we just congratulate Thea on this well-deserved honor. And then finally, could I have Coach Dave Wickham come on up? This year, Coach Wickham reached a remarkable milestone, finishing the season with 230 career wins in Section 5. This achievement placed him at the very top of the mountain with the most wins in Section 5 history, and it's truly an outstanding accomplishment. On a personal note, I want to say how grateful I am to have known Dave for so long. When I first started coaching football here at Mid-Lakes, we had joint practices with Geneva and Palmac, and I remember soaking up as much knowledge as I possibly could as a young coach. I remember trying to purposely finagle my way to some of the stations that he was coaching so that I could better take some of that stuff back, steal it, and bring it back to my young athletes that I was coaching. I recall seeing Dave many countless Sunday mornings at St. Dominic's Church, and just to envy him, like knowing that he was on his way to do some film breakdown. And I just, I envy the time and effort he had put in for that. Fast forward to today, I'm currently in the current role as an athletic director. I feel fortunate enough to have Dave answer my phone call when I asked him to return if he wanted to coach back at Mid-Lakes again and to be here for our student athletes. As a district, we are incredibly lucky to have someone like Dave leading our teams. I was equally fortunate enough to have his presence in the building regularly. When I faced challenges that I've never seen before, I could bounce ideas off of somebody who had decades of experience. I cannot speak highly enough of Dave's work ethic, character, and leadership, and I have nothing but the most respect and admiration for this man. Congratulations, Dave, on this monumental achievement, and you truly deserve it. Thank you for everything you've done. Would the board like to ask any questions of anybody that we have recognized tonight? I know we usually zip through this, but if you want to have any opportunity to ask the kids while you have them in front of you, please feel free to do so. Not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but. Or do you guys as students have anything you want to say?
Favorite memory of volleyball season this year? What? Do you want to share your favorite memory of the volleyball season as a sole senior?
Probably winning sectionals for the second year in a row.
Yeah.
Neat experience.
Anybody else have a favorite memory that they'd like to share of their very accomplished
I definitely have to say the bus ride back was actually very nice. Yeah, no, really nothing short of that. It was nice having a group of people driving behind us in the final five and the silence and stuff like that. And all that was nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ms. Lombardi.
Thank you. All right, on to Elementary National Honor Society, Mrs. Bradley and Mrs. Altman.
Do you guys need us to talk up here for any reason? Or, yeah, is this? where you
I don't
guys-
know, what, yeah, if you're going to speak, yes, that would be the place.
With our MEHS pledge, ready? On the count of three. One. So wait, you guys got it? 1, 2, 3.
As a member of the National Elementary Honor Society, I pledge to be a strong student, achieving the most from my education, demonstrate responsibility, showing enthusiasm and working hard in all that I do, learn the skills of leadership, practicing them in all aspects of my life, be of service to my school and community, showing that I care, and be a role model for my peers, helping us all achieve our best. Heather and I have had the pleasure over many years to work with the cream of the crop out here in the middle of the cornfields at Mid-Lakes. The National Elementary Honor Society is usually comprised of 5th and 6th graders, which leads us to some great news.
So we had so many incoming 5th graders who were nominated that we made the decision to only include 6th graders this year. And we still have 32 members, which is great. 32 6th graders. Clearly, we have many leaders who exemplify the core values at MES. And just like our Mid-Lakes core values, NEHS has 4 pillars that we stand for, which include scholarship, service, responsibility, and leadership.
Last year, we presented the details of many service projects, elfing, stuffy grams, pencil pals, and Relay for Life. This year, we want to focus on the impact of our students' service and to their school and community, as well as they recognize the contributes of 2 students in particular.
Studies show that we have an anxious generation of children going through school systems all over the country. As NEHSers, we have the opportunity to practice public speaking, which is an essential skill for college career and readiness.
At our annual induction ceremony at our high school auditorium in November, each NEHS member presented a short biography of an incoming 6th grader. This past weekend, members personally thanked our local businesses in Phelps and Clifton Springs and presented them with a card and candy. In June, Mrs. Altman and Miss Bradley took on new roles in the Relay for Life of the Finger Lakes by being part of the leadership team, which means we NEHSers have more responsibilities as well, with Mrs. A being in charge of the games and NEHS members recruiting participants. We had the best participation of adults and children in years. We also had the largest fundraising year, with our Mid-Lakes NEHS team collecting over $19,000 for the American Cancer Society, the highest amount raised by any team at last year's event.
Ms. Bradley rallies the troops by joining with the MES Student Council to supply canned goods to weigh down hundreds of luminary bags, which are later donated to local food banks. NEHSers then set up and take down all the bags, transport the canned goods to cars, and switch on and off the candles which light them.
On the first Saturday in June, NEHSers will be in charge of the entire luminary ceremony at the Relay for Life of Finger Lakes. Please come and support the cause and see Mid-Lake students in action. Don't worry, we will remind you.
As part of the leadership team, Heather and I attended the relay kickoff last March, which was unfortunately underwhelming. There was a lack of community involvement, and it all seemed very scripted. This year, we will be appealing to the board to empower and support us by allowing the Mid-Lakes NEHS to host the kickoff right here in the elementary school. With some family games, homemade appetizers with recipes from our society members, yes, you're doing that, and more publicity, we hope to involve more of our Finger Lakes community members, resulting in more participation at our June event.
So above and beyond our 4 pillars is the connectedness that our students are awarded through their service to others. They thrive on bringing joy to others and being leaders in our community, and they continue to impress us year after year. He can read the last page, but this is kind of a surprise to these 2 right now. We would like to recognize Sam Bishop. This is Sammy right here. Come on up, Sammy. Sammy uses his connection to the Phelps American Legion to make and sell cookies for $1 a piece. His mom's in the audience too. So having raised over $1,000 already this relay season, yes, he and his mom have baked over 1,000 cookies already this school year. Last year, Sam raised himself $2,300 for our relay team. And inspired by Sammy's efforts, our friend James Stratton here organized a fundraiser this past Thanksgiving at a local school track, earning $500 for our team. And what makes these efforts so impressive is the demonstration of our Mid-Lakes core value of independence. These gentlemen had their own ideas, pursued them, and are crushing goals on their own time. And we would all like to say that we are so proud.
We are so proud
of all of our 32 NEHS members and all the great things that they do. And thank you, and
Thank you.
happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you for being so inspiring. Yeah, that's awesome.
To be inspired and inspiring.
All right, we're going to take a brief break to enjoy some treats over there.
Ryan's hoping.
You've been eyeing up the cookies, huh? So, guests, help yourself.
The best bond for the district, like a giant real estate lawyer, essentially, right? Yeah, pretty much. I'm in the wrong business.
All right. When we come back together, it looks like our guests are moving on, so. All right, so on to reports, our superintendent's report. Mr. Ganster.
Okay. I have a number of things to talk about tonight. So I'll do my normal update. We have several policies to go over, and I'm going to put the policy update in the agenda where the policies are going to be. So then I'll start like a second presentation then, if that's okay. All right, so the first on my update list is recently the Foundation Aid Formula Study by the Rockefeller Institute was released statewide. I was fortunate enough to go to a professional development session last Friday over at Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, where a handful of folks were present to kind of give an overarching explanation of that study. So the folks who were present, we had Brian Fessler, who is a lobbyist for the New York State School Board Association. He was in the room. Julie Marlette, who is a lawyer from Hinman Straub, who works with the superintendents in the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES to provide advocacy at the state level for things that impact our region, and also a retired Capital Region BOCES district superintendent by the name of Anita Murphy. She's recently retired, but those three were available just to present their thoughts on the Rockefeller Institute's study on foundation aid. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of the study. So the first thing that that the presenter said is pay attention to the literature review. So it's a 314-page document. The literature review pretty much outlines the various different approaches that certain states across the country use in order to provide funding from the state level to districts, school districts in their state. So their advice was to dig into that a little bit, and we might be able to get some clues as to the direction that foundation aid could be heading. Secondly, they said that the recommendations section is just that. These are just recommendations that the Rockefeller Institute presented. And, you know, in my brief reading of the study, they are, they don't appear to have much of a political agenda, if I could put it that way, because there are certain suggestions or recommendations that would support one school of thought, and there are others that support a completely different school of thought, politically speaking. So the caution there is they believe that our legislators will begin to pick and choose certain recommendations that might be advantageous to whatever their political agendas are throughout the spring. So they advocated for us as superintendents to get to know some of those recommendations and really pay attention to which recommendations our local legislators are grabbing onto, and think about how that could either positively or negatively impact our region and our individual districts. With that being said, because these are just recommendations, none of them are actually binding for the legislature or the governor. They are simply recommendations. So what that means is as we move into budget season, next time we meet, it'll be 2025, and we'll be going full steam ahead talking about the 25-26 budget. The normal sort of song and dance at Albany is going to play out. The governor will put out her executive budget sometime in January. That will then be received by the legislature. The two houses of the legislature will then pick that apart and begin to advocate for certain increases and decreases across all of the lines of the entire state budget, not just school funding. So we will have to wait patiently. Carl, I'm sure, will do his homework from a budgetary perspective on what can be anticipated with foundation aid. But we don't expect there to be a huge change in how foundation aid is actually doled out, with the exception of it's very possible that well, let me backtrack. Our governor did come out on the heels of the Rockefeller study and say that it is not her intention to remove what is called save harmless or hold harmless. And what that is it is a promise that each year schools will not have less foundation aid than they did the year before. So it's important to understand that when she says that, she could be indicating for a flat foundation aid from year to year. So we would actually experience that in the district as a cut in foundation aid because of contractual increases and increases in healthcare in the district. So if we don't receive an increase in foundation aid to keep pace with inflation and increases due to collective bargaining agreements, that we would actually feel that as a potential cut. So we have to be very aware of what flat foundation aid looks like, and hope for the best, I guess I should say. So let's see, anything else? Yeah, we're just going to be talking about foundation aid pretty much at every meeting from here on out, especially with Carl's budget presentations beginning shortly. So somewhat tied to the Rockefeller Institute and the foundation aid, but not explicitly linked, is the regionalization initiative. The regionalization initiative from the state really is founded on this idea that we have to become more efficient. So if the state is saying, hey, schools, become more efficient, please, that is another tea leaf of potential, budgetary strain at the state level. So that being said, the Commissioner of Education did come out and say that the submission of the regionalization survey tool within the state portal and engaging in the regionalization conversations in your local BOCES were optional. We in Mid-Lakes did submit the survey and do plan on engaging in those regionalization conversations with our local partners. Because I do believe that, part of our job is to be good listeners, right? And if we're not even willing to sit at the table and hear what could potentially be a good idea regionally, and possibly inspect ways to become more efficient and do what's best for our students here in Mid-Lakes, then I don't believe we're doing our job. So we submitted the survey, we'll sit at the table, we'll collaborate with our partners, and then it's safe because it's not binding, right? We can still decide which pieces of the regionalization plan that we're going to engage with and which pieces we are not. So what that means is if none of these ideas really serve a purpose for us and our students, we could choose not to engage. So there's safety with submitting that survey and being a part of the regionalization process. Another large update came from the state in the way of the Zero Emission Bus Initiative report. All right, so one of the departments at NYSED collected all of the data from all of the districts across the state regarding the level of implementation for the Zero Emission School Bus Initiative. Now, I'm saying zero emission on purpose. We've colloquially begun to call it the Bus Electrification Initiative, but technically it is a zero emission bus initiative. Electric buses happen to be the only option at this point, okay? So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. So if there's another invention that comes along in the next couple of years, we might be able to use that, but for the time being, it's bus electrification. So that being said, we're gonna begin to have a lot of conversations about this in the near future, and as we move towards the deadline of full implementation of 2035. So I wanted to make sure that I brought it up tonight. We actually have on Wednesday, Wendell Energy, a contractor, coming here to begin our electrification study here in the district. And what they will do is they will give us a report that says, here's what Mid-Lakes has and makes them great for electrification. Here's what we don't have and we need to remedy prior to 2035, right? So we're talking about the power grid locally and all of these things that would make charging upwards of 35 school buses a reality each day and evening. So they're going to come out and I talked to Carl. Once we get the Wendell Energy survey back, we'll do a presentation here at the board so we can have all of those details for our board and for our community members. All right? All right, let's see. Now, moving into some more celebratory news, we did have a successful capital project vote last Wednesday night. The proposition for the $35 million project passed with 206 yes votes and 107 no votes. I just want to take a moment to thank the Facilities Committee and also Carl here for doing a ton of work. Additional partners to thank Edge Architecture, our Watchdog building partners, Mengel Metzger Bar, and the law offices of William Marquardt, who oversee the bonding of the project, and Pam for doing a ton of work behind the scenes to prepare for the vote and to actually execute the vote properly. So thanks to everybody. And, the next phase is not going to be a lot to talk about because we're going to move into that design phase, which is a lot of behind the scene work. And then once we have a solid design, we'll report that out, and then it would go out for SED approval. So we're still looking at, a good 18 months to 2 years before we even break ground on the project. All right, but we will move as quickly as we can. All right, let's see here. Recently, we did have our annual RPO concert over at the high school. There were nice numbers there. One community member who caught me at the secondary concert said it wasn't enough and we need to get more people to the RPO. So, we'll have to advertise it a little more strongly next year. But I do want to thank GW Lisk for their generosity in making that annual event possible. The Clifton Springs Rotary Club for handling the tickets. And the logistics for the evening, our facilities department for handling the logistics of the evening. I have to mention Amy Connor, the high school chorus teacher, who goes out of her way to create this experience for the kids. And it's not actually normal for students to perform with the RPO. That doesn't happen in every district, but it happens here in Midlake. So it was amazing to see our high school chorus students actually singing with the RPO. It really helps them kind of rise to that professional level and see how far they can take their art. So I think that's pretty amazing. So thanks to Amy. And then thanks to Amy Vanderweide, Joe Godfrey, Todd Clausen, Chris Marcourt, and Pam for additional help to make that night a success. All right. That does it right now for updates. Just a quick update on the emergency pool project. As you know, the pool will go through its first shutdown at the end of this week. And then we hope to open it mid-January for about a month. And then we would have our second shutdown the week prior to February break. So we're still on track to make that happen. All right, and I'll do policies when we get to it on the agenda. Yep.
Thank you, Nick.
Yep.
All right, on to board discussion topics. So first, our Board of Ed goals for the year are on the agenda for approval tonight. Does anybody have any last minute comments, questions, anything? Are we good with our goals? Okay, all right. And Mike and I attended the 4-county membership meeting with Brian Fessler from NISBA as the guest speaker. He was talking about the Foundation Aid study as well, and that was just before, it was the Tuesday before the study was supposed to be out on the following Sunday. So I think just the biggest takeaway I had was kind of what Mr. Ganster spoke to, that just because this study was done doesn't mean that the governor's necessarily going to go forward with all the recommendations, which I think initially when we were hearing about it, we thought she was asking for this because she had a motive, but then we realized that she could decide to not abide by any of the recommendations. So it is interesting that some of the recommendations kind of fall on one side and some fall on the other, and it'll be interesting to see how it all falls out and plays out. But I don't, Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add from?
The one thing I noticed was the in the room that night we had board representation from all across the region, and everybody seemed to be kind of cohesive in the way that they were talking about things and looking at things, and it seemed like a pretty unified group across the region.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, I would have to agree. We're all kind of just waiting,
Yeah.
see what happens. So interesting. It'll be interesting couple months. So, all right. The only other thing I have is just to check out the December 4-county newsletter if you haven't read it already. Sue Wyatt sent it on December 4th. There's some save the dates in there and some information on that zero emissions school bus progress survey that Nick was referring to. As he said, we'll be talking about this more in the coming months. So if you can take a minute, there is a link in that newsletter to read that the survey results. It's a long document, but if you don't read it, there's like the introductory part, which doesn't take very long, and then the real bulk of the document is like how many areas was it broken down to? Like 9 different areas of the state. So you can just get down to our section where it talks about our area, because I think that's where it's most relevant for us. It is interesting to kind of pull some pieces from the other areas of the state. You know, I mean, Long Island is dealing with a totally different bus electrification set of issues. And so interesting to just kind of look at pieces of that. But I would encourage you to check out that that link, because it's good information for us to have as we move forward and have discussions about how this is all going to unfold. So,
Can I ask a question on that?
yes.
What is the Wendell study? Did they give us kind of a time frame of when they would actually have something that we could read?
So Wendell Energy, we actually, through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, collectively several school districts put out a request for proposal for an architect firm that's specialized in electrification studies. Wendell won the bid, so there's several school districts that have gone with Wendell. Along the way, in order for Wendell to do the study, they're doing the study through NYSERDA, which is an approved organization that works with school districts across the state. Depending on your aid ratio, the NYSERDA study can be it can cost you 25%, or it can cost you, it can be absolutely free. For us, it's absolutely free. Now, along the way, NYSERDA has project managers. They had about 3 to 5 project managers. Several of them either resigned or got reassigned. NYSERDA was down to 1 project manager across the state. So everything came to a grinding halt as far as the electrification study, and Wendell couldn't do their part until NYSERDA first approved the school district. That only happened last month. So as far as Wendell's concerned, they're itching to get on site. They have all our bus fleet information, our routes, the number of miles we drive, the number of gallons of diesel we consume. They're coming to take a look at our site, but they hope to bring NYSEG to the table in a future meeting, and then finally conclude their study where they're presenting either to the district or to the board. Our hope is that by June 30th of 2025, that study is entirely complete, because we're kind of hopeful and we want to know exactly what they have to say in terms of how many buses, how many chargers, what can we support. So I would have liked the study to have been done already, but unfortunately the NYSERDA piece was entirely out of our hands. Yeah.
Thanks for that question, because that question came up in my head earlier, like, why aren't we talking to NYSEG? But it's because Wendell is the architecture piece that does the study, and they
bring
consult with
everybody to the
NYSEG.
table.
Right, to get,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments, or? Okay. Oh,
Actually,
go ahead.
Just one quick
Yep.
thing as I'm thinking of this. So within that study, did you say they're going to be looking at routes? Would that include distance of routes and all the, and time to charge in between runs or emergency evacuations?
You are absolutely correct. So they're going to tell us, so the way, when we sat at the table, when several districts sat at the table, Wendell said, by the time the study's done, we'll tell you how many chargers, or one, how much power consumption can you afford? How many chargers will that get you? How many buses will that get you? If you buy a Bluebird bus, how many miles that Bluebird bus will give you versus the Thomas bus versus the International bus? How long you can go between charging depending on the level of the charger. So the study, as far as Wendell said, is incredibly detailed. And they're not aligned with one bus company or one manufacturer. They'll give you options and let the district make an informed decision from that point on. So our hope is that the answer is yes to all your questions, that we will have a very comprehensive understanding of what we can actually achieve.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? All right. On to public comment. The Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District Board of Education invites public comment at this time to those who have signed up in advance with the district clerk. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes or less. Written remarks may be provided to the board if time expires before a speaker completes their remarks. We ask individuals to state their name prior to comments and to provide the district clerk with their contact information for purposes of follow-up. Although the board will not respond directly to individual comments at this time, items brought to the attention of the board may be taken under consideration for future response, action, or follow-up with the speaker. Issues related to specific district students, whether positive, negative, or neutral, must be brought to the attention of the superintendent of schools privately in order to safeguard student privacy. The board reserves the right to terminate a speaker's comments if their comments are in excess of 2 minutes, are repetitive, or are not appropriate for discussion in an open public forum. All visitors are reminded to abide by the district code of conduct and to be respectful and courteous both as speakers and as audience members. We are a community focused on bettering public education for our students, some of whom may be present. Thank you. No comments? Okay. Thanks, Pam. All right, on to new business items. So the first item, A, budget calendar for the 25-26 school year. Is there a motion to adopt the Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District budget development calendar for the 25-26 school year as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, if there is no objection, I would like to block items B and C, the capital project vote results and the bond resolution. So these both have to do with the capital project. Is there a motion to approve items B and C as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items B and C as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item D, the election services agreement. So this is for the elections in May. Is there a motion to approve the election services agreement between the school district and the County of Ontario as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item D, the election services agreement, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. Item E, the 2024-25 Board of Education goals. Is there a motion to approve the Board of Education, the 4 Board of Education goals for the coming year as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item E, the 2024-25 Board of Education goals as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, policy manual modifications. Mr. Gainster, you want to speak to these?
So there are, I believe, exactly 19 policies for us to talk through. So what I've done to best capture this and really balance being thorough with also being efficient and respectful of people's time is I've tried to organize this in a certain way. So the first thing I want to do is just talk about the 5,000s. If you remember, we're currently focused on our section 5,000 of the policy manual, non-instructional / business operations. The draft policy manual has 65 policies in total. 44 of those policies are identical to the ones that we currently have. Those are the ones that we reviewed at our last meeting. 22 policies have differences in comparison to our current manual. Now, within those 22, there are varying degrees of differences, okay? And we'll get to that in just a second. So to review, this section includes policies on budget, income, expenditures, purchasing, fiscal accounting and reporting, non-instructional operations, and transportation. All right, so I'm actually going to zip through several of these because the first batch of slides are all of the policies that are identical to our current policies that we've already looked at. Okay, so actually, so there's our budget, income, expenditures, purchasing, fiscal accounting and reporting, and our non-instructional operations, as well as transportation. All of those are identical to our current manual. Not only that, Erie 1 BOCES recommends that they stay as is, no changes, because they're predicated on law, as well as the comptroller's rules for how we manage business here in the district. Okay, so are there any questions based on any of those 44 policies that we have no room for changing? Okay. I had to phrase it that way because we can discuss them, but we really can't change them. All right. So now we're going to move on and focus on the 22 policies that we have changed. And like I said, there are varying degrees of change within those 22. All right, here we go. Within those, there are 16 policies that have minor changes in language, and our representative from Erie 1, TC Ferrito is her name. She said that as Erie One gets new lawyers who draft policies and work for them, they end up with different interpretations on certain language on how to express policies that are based on law and regulation that we don't have much wiggle room in terms of changing. So what we see in those 16 policies are minor language changes that the lawyers at Erie One BOCES believe is a better representation of the law and the regulations that back the policies. In other words, very minor changes, almost to the point where we could have potentially grouped them with those 44 policies from the very beginning of the presentation. So there's not much wiggle room in discussion with those policies. All right. But there are minor changes. So because there are minor changes that don't match our current policy manual, we do have to technically do a first read of those policies, a second read, and an adoption. So that's why they're here in this section. All right. So there is one policy because it's a policy on meal shaming, and I'll get to that in a minute, but there was a question as to whether or not we should retire the policy or adopt the updated Erie One policy, and that's because we currently have the community eligibility provision for school meals, which in some ways does make our meal shaming policy a moot policy. However, because we still do have students that purchase food beyond what community eligibility provision provides, we thought it best to maintain that policy. The current policy from Erie One does differ than our current policy, so it does have to go on a first read, second read, and adoption. But that decision was made just a little bit too late to get that policy onto this agenda. So it'll be on the agenda for next time. So there are 3 policies that required significant time to review that had some choices and decisions that I want to go through with a more fine-tooth comb with the board. None of the changes are, I would say, controversial or anything like that. They're essentially assigning people, assigning how frequent committees will meet, things of that nature. So we'll get to that in a second. And then we have 3 policies that we're actually going to recommend for retirement. 2 of them are on the agenda for tonight for retirement. One of the policies we can't retire until we adopt the new policy, because if we retire it too early, then we'll actually have a gap in time where we don't have a policy that addresses that item. So here we go. These are the ones that have minor changes. So administration of the budget essentially outlines how it's incumbent upon the district to develop our annual budget with responsibilities to the superintendent and the business administrator. Policy 5240, school tax assessment and collection of property tax and exemptions. It basically says that the district has to have rules for tax assessments and how we're going to collect taxes, and then certain exemptions for elderly folks. The 5321, use and safeguarding of district credit cards. That was a policy of focus within recent memory, and that has essentially remained identical. 5510, accounting for funds, more fiscal policy. 5530, petty cash funds and cash in the school buildings. Each year at our reorg meeting, we do authorize a number of petty cash funds across the district. This is the policy that governs those. 5540, publication of the district's annual financial statements, something that we have to do. What's that?
We just did that. So it'll be published with fiscal advisors in a matter of days.
Okay, so following those policies. 5572, how we will run our audit committee. 5573, internal audit functions. We do have an internal auditor, so this policy outlines how we operate there. 5630, facilities, our inspection, operation, and maintenance. Of course, that outlines how we manage our facilities. 5710, our transportation program. 5730, school bus safety. 5740, qualification of bus drivers, 5741, drug and alcohol testing for school drivers, or school bus drivers. Those are all policies that, again, have been updated from our current manual in minor ways, but in many ways are non-negotiables in terms of what the laws and regulations say. So they've just been updated to match. And then finally, the meal shaming policy, which we will have on our next agenda. Does everybody know what meal shaming is?
No.
Okay, so a quick explanation. So probably within the last 5, 6, or 7 years, districts were required to have a policy against meal shaming, which essentially requires the district to have practices and procedures that don't highlight someone who may be receiving free and reduced lunch services. So a long time ago when I went to school, students actually had physical tickets in their hands. So that would be an example of meal shaming. We wouldn't want to have people have to feel that way in the lunch line at school. So in this day and age, every student punches in their code and nobody knows who's receiving free and reduced lunch services. And in addition to that, there's specific guidelines in the meal shaming policy about how we would recoup any balances due to the food service C fund. So that's kind of the meal shaming policy in a nutshell. All right. So there are 3 policies in this group that required significant review. We're going to go through 2 of them fairly quickly because there was significant review, but there's not a ton to talk about. The first one is our policy on wellness. The district does currently have a wellness policy. We use the updated Erie One wellness policy and customize it to our district. And in reviewing that with the policy committee, we realized that this was an opportunity to essentially reboot the wellness policy and start more open discussions about the wellness policy. So we'll go through that in a moment. And then policy 5676 is actually a new policy, and it has to do with privacy and security for student, teacher, and principal data. All right, and this outlines how the district will operate from a networking and technology perspective in terms of protecting personally identifiable information of our students, teachers, and principals that we house on our network. And then the last one that the policy committee has not had enough time to adequately read and recommend any changes is 5231, gifts, recognitions, and naming of facilities. That'll end up on our next agenda for a first read. So let's take a quick look at, we'll start with our wellness policy. So the wellness policy directs us or requires us to have a wellness committee. The outline of the wellness committee is here. The policy committee did recommend 3 meetings for the wellness committee a year, 1 in the summer, 1 in the fall, and 1 in the spring, to come together and oversee our wellness initiatives in the district. It has a list of recommended folks. Our current wellness policy does not have an administrator in charge over to oversee the policy. John, I see you over there. John Lombardi has been assigned through this policy as the person who's going to provide oversight for the wellness policy. We do have 2 wellness coordinators that he will work with who will do a lot of the nuts and bolts kind of work. Currently, Lindsay Berniski and Brittany Sullivan. A little bit here about community engagement, an annual notification of the policy that we would run in our annual school calendar. Another piece was what is called a triennial assessment, which is every 3 years, the person overseeing, so that would be Mr. Lombardi, overseeing the wellness policy would do an assessment of how well we're implementing it and make recommendations to make our implementation of the policy even better. All right. a little bit on how we're going to revise and update the policy, additional community involvement language, record keeping for the policy. A lot of this is identical or very similar to what we currently have in place. And then the policy has a large section on nutrition, which governs how we are going to provide nutritious meals for our students for breakfast and lunch. And it lists the various programs that we are a part of for food service. We'll have water available. Language about the competitive food and beverages that are available for food service. And then we have a handful of sections that govern foods that aren't really available or aren't provided through our food service department. And the language is a little weird. So first, it's food and beverages provided but not sold to students during the school day. So these are classroom parties, classroom snacks brought in by parents, or other foods given as incentives. These should meet or exceed the USDA Smart Snack and School Nutrition Standards and be low in saturated fat and have 0 grams of trans fat per serving. That language is, with the exception of the USDA Smart Snack and School Nutrition Standards, already part of our current policy. So it's actually not a change. Secondly, for fundraising, fundraisers, all food and beverage made available to sale students through fundraisers on school campus during the school day will meet at a minimum the USDA Smart Snack and School Nutrition Standards. So that is for sale during the school day. So that doesn't preclude fundraisers that don't match those standards to occur outside of the school day. And then food and beverages available for sale at events outside the school day. So think concession stand. For an athletic event or another event on campus, that we would have food, it would include options that are low in saturated fat and have 0 grams of trans fat per serving. In other words, there have to be some healthy options available when food is being provided or sold on campus. So that doesn't take away the tacos in a bag or a pizza on a Friday night football game or another athletic event, or concessions at a theater production, okay? We just have to have some healthy options available. Make sense? All right. And then finally, we are actually, one of the policies that I didn't mention for retirement is our vending machine policy. And that is because we're going to merge vending machines into the wellness policy and simply say that all foods and beverages sold in vending machines need to be consistent with this policy. And then specifically, one prohibition on energy drinks to not be sold in our vending machines on campus. All right. There's a section for food and beverages and how they could be marketed at school. Schools aren't allowed to market specific things. Now, there are certain things. So if you could imagine like a name brand bottled water on a vending machine, that could be construed as marketing in school, but that would be a tolerable level of marketing in school. So we're not going to, have the scoreboard in the gymnasium called the Coca-Cola scoreboard or anything like that. So we're not going to market specific unhealthy products in school overtly. All right. So promoting nutrition and education. So this is fairly simple for us because it is already embedded in our health curriculum. Physical activity, we're going to encourage physical activity not only in PE classes, but in all classes to the extent possible. And a little bit of language on our PE. This language here is very similar or identical to what's already in place in the current wellness policy, so that's why I'm skimming through it. We're encouraged to have community partnerships. community access to district facilities for physical activities. We do make campus available for the community to walk outside after hours. So we do have a little bit of that. And then there's a little section on professional learning for wellness. So that's the wellness policy in a nutshell. It's pretty lengthy. We're considering this a first read. So board members, if you'd like to ask any questions now, that would be great. If you'd like to ask questions next time we come together, or via email in between now and the next meeting, that would be fine too. So any questions on the wellness policy? Okay. We're going to take a look at another policy. This is new. So this one, I'm going to make this one as simple as humanly possible. So Educational Law 2D was new about 5 years ago, and it has a lot of requirements for a district to handle personally identifiable information of students and staff. All right. When this came around, there was a day where districts were implementing technologies where students had to implement or input their name and grade level and other information into a web-based application without any oversight whatsoever. And it became pretty clear that we didn't want students forfeiting their personally identifiable information to companies that may have no protections for that personally identifiable information. So Ed Law 2D came around and said, districts, you have to do better. You actually have to engage with these companies and develop data privacy agreements in order to do business with these companies. And there was kind of some painful growth over the last 5 years with private industry when it comes to providing schools with software programs. In terms of certain companies embracing Ed Law 2D and making these privacy agreements and actually following through. And some said no thank you and actually withdrew their business from New York State because they didn't want to have to bother with hardening their networks in order to protect student information. So the good news here is even without this policy in place, we've been following the law with data privacy agreements, and any formally adopted technology platform that we have in the district, there is a data privacy agreement in place. So we're compliant with Ed Law 2D. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Let's see here. Let's start going through. So this policy began, the NIST framework. So another piece of this puzzle is that the district is agreeing to use what is called the NIST framework, which is, NIST stands for the National Institute for Standards and Technology. So it's basically a giant rubric that allows the district to assess our own quality of network and cybersecurity for our network here on the district. Or within the district. So are we protecting that network from folks who might want to try to hack into our system and actually breach the system and steal our students' information, right? No different than hackers that this time of year try to get into any retailer's network in order to steal credit card information, right? So the NIST framework allows us to reflect on several different dimensions of cybersecurity and then ask ourselves if we're doing good enough to protect cybersecurity here in the district. So the basis of this entire policy is Ed Law 2D and the NIST framework, okay? All right, so there's a ton of definitions that exist, and those are because there's lots of different terminology within Ed Law 2D and terminology within the NIST framework. So we're going to scroll right past all of those. Still going. So then there are statements as to how we are going to be transparent with our data collection and how we're going to restrict data collection. and that we actually want to take steps to minimize how much personally identifiable data that we're collecting on students, right? And right now, we collect the same information year in and year out, right? In terms of PII, with students' identities, their grades, perhaps their status as a student with a disability, things like that. We're not really ramping up the amount of PII that we're collecting year in and year out. So the Commissioner of Education has appointed a Chief Privacy Officer that we're accountable to. All right, that's a state level position. We're accountable to that person, and they have certain rights to come in here and request information. And that's what this section outlines. We have 2 data protection officers in-house whose job it is to ensure that we are doing our best to protect students, staff, personally identifiable information consistent with Ed Law 2D and consistent with the NIST framework. And that's Lydia Shadler and Bill Gowan. This section lists our standards in terms of data privacy and security. There are responsibilities for third-party contractors, what the district is responsible for, what the third-party contractors are responsible for, and then, if it's not a private organization, how we would engage with our local BOCES. So they're part of this policy as well. A click wrap agreement, this is a technical thing. When somebody clicks something like you agree to the terms and conditions of your iPhone or your device, this says that when you click that, it matters. All right, but they call it a click wrap agreement. So if we, as a district, click on something like this, that we are actually accountable to those things. There is a parent's Bill of Rights for data privacy and security outlined here, which is required based on Ed Law 2D. Rights of parents and eligible students to inspect and review their educational records under FERPA. That is, FERPA is the Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act. That is a federal law that we are compliant with. It outlines how we would handle complaints of a breach or unauthorized access to our network, where PII could be in question, how to report a breach or unauthorized release, and then how we would investigate a breach or unauthorized release, and then finally, how we would notify the impacted parties of said breach. And then finally, providing annual training to our staff on how they can keep our network secure, which we do through our Safe Schools training each year. And how we will provide notification. So, 2 policies in the weeds, right? And I would offer the same opportunity for questions now, in between now and our next meeting, and at the next meeting. So does anyone have any questions now about our data privacy policy? Okay. Let me queue up my presentation just to make sure I don't leave anything out. Oh yeah, we have to talk about the 2 policy retirements that are on the agenda. Oh, come on, network, don't fail me now. You know what, I'm gonna go like this. I'm just gonna scroll down. So these slides are what I just talked through. So we're gonna skip right to retirements. So we are going to retire tonight 5235 corporate sponsorships. This is a policy that outlines if the district actually entered into a business agreement with a corporation to sponsor something here at school. So I kind of made that poor joke about the Coca-Cola scoreboard in the gymnasium. If we did that, we would have to have a policy on corporate sponsorships. It's not something we do. Therefore, the policy committee is recommending retiring this policy because we have no corporate relationships or sponsorships, nor are we planning on it. The second one 5721, transportation in a child safety zone. So this policy is relevant to districts that have students that walk to school. I won't go into it, but it's a way for a student who is required to walk to school because they live within the walking zone. If there is some unsafe thing between their house and the school, a parent can appeal and ask for a child safety zone to be established, and then that way we would provide transportation. But because we provide transportation to all students, it is not a relevant policy for us, so we would like to retire it.
So that actually should say because we only have bussers.
Oh, that's,
Right? Because we don't have any walkers.
I don't know if bussers is,
that's the right
yep,
terminology,
but we're gonna
but
leave it
because we
because
don't
that
have
was a
any
mistake.
walkers.
Thank you for picking up on that. That was just a mistake. And then finally, vending machines, we're gonna retire the vending machine policy because we have dovetailed the vending machine language into the wellness policy. So that does it for policy updates. Thank you for bearing with me. There was a lot of work that went into this, both at the policy committee level and wrapping my head around how I would efficiently present it to the board. So, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. On to G and H. If there are no objections, I'd like to block items G and H. This is the field trips, or a field trip, and Liz fundraisers. Tracy, can you turn on your microphone, please? Thank you. Do I have to re-say that all? No. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the fundraisers as, is there a motion to approve items G and H, field trips and fundraisers as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to personnel items. If there are no objections, I would like to block items A, B, and C, so appointments, substitute appointments, and coaching appointments. Is there a motion to approve items A through C as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items A through C as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. And if there are no objections, I would like to block items D through F. Is there a motion to approve items D, E, and F as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items D through F as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And on to adjournment. It went away. Is there a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting for the purpose of entering into executive session to discuss matters pertaining to the employment of a particular person, information relating to current investigation or prosecution of a criminal offense that would imperil effective law enforcement if disclosed, and discussions involving pending or current litigation?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried.